Albert is in the green room, and we're going to bring him on. So, Albert, just so you know, before you come on, I know you can hear me, that I already gave a description of who you are, so everyone knows. And let's see. Hold on. Here he is. Hi, welcome to Two Psychics.
How are you, Mary? Michael, nice to see you.
Welcome, Albert. Pleasure to have you here with Two Psychics podcast.
Hi, I'm Amy. Nice to meet you.
Great to be here. Thank you so much.
Sure. Where are you coming from, Albert?
You're familiar with Toronto, I'm sure.
Yes.
Sure, yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Go north 2 hours to a place called Wasaga Beach.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I live in a beach town.
Oh, nice. I love beach towns. We're both in beach towns.
Well, not so nice right now because it's freezing out there.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
we're in that same weather pattern as you. It's probably much worse up there, though. I'm sure there's a lot more snow.
Yeah, there's a lot of it for sure. But I'm good. It's beautiful, really.
Yeah.
Nice. Perfect.
Yeah.
So I'm very curious, Albert. So coming from Canada,
yeah,
what are the dynamics around the metaphysical realm about, around past life regression, just all the aspects of, I would say that the metaphysical that we're discussing here, it's becoming pretty prevalent and pretty mainstream in the US. Here in the States, I feel like every town has some kind of metaphysical center at this point. Maybe a few are lagging behind. But what is that dynamic in Canada? What does that look like up there?
I believe the dynamic is very similar. Everywhere I go, I remember, 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, you really had to pick and choose your audience on what you can say and how much you can say about, let's call it the spiritual topics or metaphysical topics. That's not the case anymore. It's almost like we can just say it out loud and no one is going to look at you in a strange way. Yeah. And it seems like, in my little town, there's a spiritual store over there, and then there's another one over there, and there's a third one over there. So it's, like you said, it's becoming very prevalent, and it's a beautiful thing, really. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, that's good. That's good. People are starting to awaken to the spiritual realm that's around us and understanding that it's not some hokey pokey woo woo thing. There's
exactly
really true insight and guidance that can come from us. Absolutely. Understanding it and practicing it and putting it and incorporating it into our daily lives.
Yeah.
So one of the things we always like to deep dive on here in Two Psychics, before we start talking about past life regression and hypnosis and what you're doing, we always like to deep dive into your journey. So what was the journey that got you to where you are now? Did you come from a religious family that was open and tuned into this stuff? Did you have experiences as a child that led this, that led and opened you to this path? What was it like?
I was not from a spiritually oriented family. My family was from the Roman Catholic tradition. So there was no one to talk to as a child. But as a young person, I remember I was always interested in spiritual topics. I was interested in metaphysical topics. And the more I studied it, of course, in those days, I had to keep it. I kept it secret. I was shy about it. So when my buddies came over, I would hide the cassette tapes. I would get rid of the books. Cassette tapes.
We were dating ourselves here. Yeah, I had a bunch of them.
So the more I studied, the more I knew I wanted in. The problem was I didn't know how to get in. So, today I have a much better understanding of intuition and psychic ability and channeling and all that stuff. And we all do that to some degree. Okay. Some to a greater degree, some to a lesser degree. But then back then I didn't understand that. So I thought, how do I even dare go into this world if I'm not a psychic, I'm not a channeler, I'm not a medium, I'm none of these things, right? So of course, the more I contemplated it, the more that pesky little thing called imposter syndrome started to play on me, right? And imposter syndrome says you can't do that, right? But luckily, I stuck with it. And synchronicity does what synchronicity does. And one afternoon, I was watching an interview, the man leading the interview was a guy called George Nuri. You're probably familiar with George Nuri. And he was interviewing a really regular looking man. He didn't look like a spiritual guru. He didn't look like a Buddhist monk. He was just a regular man. And this man did something called past life regression hypnosis. And he was telling his stories. And in that moment, the light bulb went off. And I thought, that's my lane. That's what I need to do. So my job description, if you had to give it a description, would be spiritually oriented investigative reporter, backed by intuition. Now, you could just imagine how thrilled I was when I heard Dolores Cannon describing herself as an investigative journalist rather than a spiritualist. I thought, man, what good company am I in? And
yeah, that's a fantastic title. I love that.
Yeah. So today I understand intuition much greater, to a much greater degree, and I understand where it's at work. So when the session's over and I look back, I think, man, I couldn't have planned that guidance. That was directed by a higher power for sure, by the higher mind or by whatever you want to call it. Yeah, so that's how I got to past life regression hypnosis.
Did you have on your own many past life experiences in dreams or in person that guided you into this realm and focus of your life?
Do you mean that did this information enter into my dream state that led me to this point?
Yeah. Did you have past life experiences, and then you were just, wow, this is fascinating? Did you yourself, growing up as a child, and have memories of your past lives?
Well, yeah. In the dream state, for the most part. Of course, there were. Once that light bulb goes off, you look back and you notice all the synchronicities. But until that light bulb goes off, you don't notice all the synchronicities. You know, that's the beautiful thing about having your awakening to what you're meant to do. Michael, you were saying something about that yourself, and there's something beautiful about it, because you really learn the power of synchronicity and how to trust it, because the more you trust it, the more powerful it becomes. It's sort of like it ramps up and it ramps up and it ramps up. But Mary, to your question, yes, in the dream state, because I would have these what I would call them strange dreams, okay, not of an earthly nature. Okay, so I knew something was up, but I was young, and you ignore the information. Later on, once I entered in this world, right, especially when you're doing your courses and your study and all that stuff, everyone is working on each other. So I ended up getting a bunch of past life regressions where I was the subject. So I was able to learn a lot about myself and my soul story. And my purpose here on planet Earth, the fact that I'm very new to planet Earth. I've only been here a couple of times, so that explained a lot about how things have always felt very strange, very unfamiliar, and very overwhelming. It's I was one of those kids that used to say, the gravity is too much on this planet. I used to say, that was a strange thing for a kid to say that, but I used to say things like that. It's like, what's wrong with this place? This is too much. So, yeah. So yes, Mary, there were messages entering into the dream state and within my life as well. And in hindsight, you really see all those things. You really recognize all those little things. Yeah.
So now, any of our listeners that aren't familiar with past life regression and the process, can you take us through what a past life regression session would look like? And how could someone prepare for that? What are some things in that process that would enable a better past life regression?
Right. That's a good question. Most people ask that question because past life, in their mind, it's some sort of weird mystical thing. They don't even know what's involved. Typically, the client shows up. I ask them to prepare in advance things that they want clarity on, be it an emotional issue or a physical issue, a life purpose issue, whatever it is that's important to them. Okay. Sometimes no issue at all is okay, right? You just want to explore your soul history, your soul lineage. Perhaps you had a mystical experience or something that entered into your dream state that was so profound that you never forgot it. 20 years passed and it was still happening. It was still in your mind. So that's another good reason to have a session. So typically they show up with an intention. What is it you want to get out of this session? So we have a conversation for roughly about an hour. Okay. As you could imagine, the rapport between myself and the client needs to be 10 out of 10. The trust level between myself and the client needs to be 10 out of 10. Basically, before we go into this, because it's a pretty big deal, guiding them into the what we call the lower theta brainwave state or the hypnotic state. That's a big journey, right? So that's why it's so important to spend that block of time with them in advance. Once you get to know them and you understand what it is they're wanting clarity on, then the process begins. Then you move from the chair or the couch to the lounger or the whatever it is. Typically, they're in a lying down position, really comfortable. Okay, and I guide them into the theta brainwave state or the hypnotic state, if you want to call it that. And then we enter, and then we call it the gateway. Once we go through the gateway, they enter into experience. Now, it's important to say that we call it past life regression, but it's not necessarily always a past life. It's just the title that we give it. Sometimes they enter into the experience within the current life at an earlier stage, typically in childhood. Perhaps they enter in as an extraterrestrial looking individual entity. Perhaps they enter in as an elemental. In other words, no physical body to speak of. Typically, these are the more advanced souls that have these experiences. The lesser advanced souls typically enter into a past life, and that's pretty typical, or an earlier stage of the current life. It could be an extra dimensional life. Sometimes they take me through journeys that I myself don't even know where we're at and what's happening. Okay, but as a good investigative journalist, I need to guide them through the process because the information will be relevant to them, no matter how strange it sounds to me or no matter how confusing it is to me. And so we go through that process. That we probably spend about an hour and a half in the past life part of the session. Then we move. In a sense, it's like going from fourth gear to sixth gear. Then we move to the part we call speaking to the higher mind. And that's where essentially they become their own channeler. They become their own psychic. They become their own medium. Okay. And it's quite a profound shift. And it's the most beautiful part of the session, because I'm now in the presence of divinity. And I even feel my own body shift, and I find myself becoming way more respectful. Thank you. May I, please. I refer to the higher mind. I speak to the higher mind in this way. Once I've guided them to connect to their higher mind, that's where we get to ask all our questions, no matter what it is. Okay. why did so and so manifest that disease within the physical body? Why did so and so? Why do they have these repeating negative relationship patterns? We also ask for clarity on the past life part, okay? Because sometimes the past lives play out, and I myself don't really know the significance of it. I don't at this point, I'm not able to connect the dots. But once we get to the higher mind part, I will say, why did you show her that past life? What does she need to know? How does that connect the dots between that past life and the current life? And the higher mind always answers in the most clear and powerful way. And it's all recorded, so that the recording becomes their homework. It's like, there's your higher mind information. You got free will. We all have free will. Do the work. Don't do the work. It's up to you now. Okay. So there is no such thing as fix me. I've had maybe in my career a couple of clients that have said to me, here's the money, just fix me. And I say, well, sorry, honey, there's no such thing as that. Okay. That's not the way it works.
It's a process.
It's a process. Yeah. So, yeah, I hope that made sense.
Yeah. What I do like that you touched upon
is
every past life may not be of just this earthly realm. You know,
right.
You could have lived in other dimensions. Can we explore that a little bit? Can you talk about maybe a particular past life regression that you took someone through, that it was of a different realm, of a different dimension, and what that looked like and what that experience was?
Right.
Before you say that, I just want to add one thing.
Yeah.
That was amazing.
Oh, good.
What you just told me. No, I loved everything you said, because you're very much awakened and your consciousness is out there, and you've explored so much. I'm just so happy, because
Great.
I didn't really know that much about you before I brought you on, and I'm so relieved. And I love your perspective and where you come from and how you do, everything that you just said is fascinating. Fascinating. Okay. That's all I say.
Well, we really should call this work fascinating rather than past life, because it really is fascinating. There's no question about that. When they pop in as an elemental, no physical body to speak of, those experiences are really interesting, because you learn that they have a very important task. Some of them are tasked with the job of, or responsible for the creation of the atmosphere for a new planet. Some of them are tasked with the oxygen. Some are tasked with the water. Some are tasked with whatever it is, and some are tasked with the introduction of certain life that will be introduced onto that planet. So it's not just I'm non-physical and I'm just hanging around here and it's just beautiful. There's work to be done out there, and those are the elementals. So that was really amazing to discover that. The documentaries I've been watching since I was a kid, where they say, well, the moon smashed into the earth and all the little particles coalesced and all. That's not the case when you speak to the higher mind, or when you speak to the elementals. Okay, that's not the way planets are built or universes are created. Again, those are the more advanced souls that share this particular type of information, or even the extraterrestrial lives. Those are really amazing as well. There was a client recently, and he was a non-physical being, and for some reason he was taking these what he described as wormholes. And he went down 4 different wormholes. And he was describing the colors and the shape of it. Each one was very unique, and each wormhole he landed in a I don't even know. I don't even think it's in our universe. It was probably somewhere in the multiverse, where none of it resembled planet Earth. And there was the second one, the third one, and fourth one. It was really confusing to me. I thought, what does this have to do with the reason for his session? The reason for his session was because he was experiencing some distress and sadness and some anxiety because he had become estranged with his children. Okay, he had absolutely no contact with his children. And I thought, what's all this wormhole business got to do with anything? So first thing, he's an advanced soul. Okay, he's here on planet Earth on a mission. Okay, we call these mission-based souls. I'm here I'm a mission-based soul. Okay, it's sort of like a soldier signing up for a mission. Okay, that's why planet Earth is so heavy to us and so difficult to us. So he's certainly an advanced soul. So when I asked his higher mind, I said, what's with all this wormhole thing? How does that tie into any of that? And especially with him being estranged with his children. And his higher mind replied, nothing has been wasted. No time has been wasted. Everything is in divine order. In fact, if you were to force yourself onto your children at that early age, you would do more damage than good. They need to grow up a little bit so that they can match your frequency much better, so that the relationship starts then. Don't sweat it. Take a vacation. Good to go. Okay, so that was an example of a session that was really confusing at first, but then at the end it all nicely came together with the higher mind explaining what the connection was. In other words, mission-based soul connected to connecting with his children at a later date. Mm-hmm. Did that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I find that fascinating. Now, someone that's listening and they want to explore, wow, why do I have this phobia, or why do I have this fear?
Right.
What would you say would be a good starting point for that person?
Oh, it's always the same. It's always the same. Phobia, fear. Write it down on the piece of paper, right? Go through the past life part of it. Perhaps you will find your answers as you're going along in that past life. But like the story I just told you a moment ago, if it's still a little foggy and you're thinking, I don't get it, I don't understand how that ties into the fear or the phobia. Mostly with fears and phobias, it's discovered within the past life. There's always an event that occurs, sort of like fear of water. You always find a drowning. Mm-hmm. Fear of heights. You always find death due to some sort of fall. Okay. Eczema. You always find death by way of burning. Mm-hmm. Migraine headaches, you'll always in a past life find blunt force trauma. In other words, that's how they died in a past life. Mm-hmm. So you'll always find that stuff. But if it's still a little foggy, no sweat. When you get to the speaking to the higher mind part, when you connect to the higher mind, when they connect to the higher mind, you simply ask the question, where does the fear come from? What is the origin? Is it appropriate? Emphasis on the word appropriate. Is it appropriate to heal that now? The answer is almost always yes. Rarely the answer is no. Okay. If the answer is yes, higher mind, please do that healing right now. And sometimes it's subtle. Sometimes it's quite profound, right? They're squirming around. It looks like they're in pain because the higher mind in that frequency, they're literally doing energy work to their body in that moment. So that's pretty profound for me as well to watch that happen.
Yeah.
So I hope that answered that question about fears and phobias. Yeah.
How many sessions do you usually do with each client, or is it depending on what is happening with each client? And
right.
Are things solved in one visit, or is this 3, or is this 5, or you just keep going? What's the protocol?
rarely 5, often 1 or 2. Okay. If it's something that is chronic, that's been going on for a very long time, like MS or something like that, okay, you're probably going to tackle maybe half of that in the first one. They'll have to come back, perhaps 3. Okay. But for your run-of-the-mill relationship stuff, and I got something in the physical body or whatever it is, life purpose, we're talking 1 session. Okay. You got to keep in mind that one single session, start to finish, it's a good part of the day. You're looking at 5 to 6 hours. So it's a deep scrub. And, so a lot of it gets done. And then the continuing work is done when they go away with their recording, because all the information is there. Go listen to it, take notes, and follow up on the advice of the higher mind.
And what about illnesses? This just came to me when you were speaking. Mm-hmm. Can you, or do you find that someone who has some kind of, you know where I'm going with this, some mm-hmm. kind of illness or disease, you can go to their past life and find out where it came from if there's no obvious reason why in this incarnation they have it?
Yes.
Can you remove it?
Yes and yes. Yeah. So if they're dealing with a disease, well, as you know, disease is simply your body that's out of ease. That's all it is. So you just got to figure out the metaphysical causation. In other words, the emotional component that is connected to the dis-ease that's making the body out of ease. So now it's just a simple matter of going to look for it. Is it in the current life? Is it in a past life? So there was a client that there was an issue with his leg. It was his leg, the lower part of his leg. And the medical industry dismissed them. They're like, listen, we've done all the tests, we've done all the scans. There's nothing here. Okay, go away. Now, so he popped into a past life where I think he was living, I wasn't able to determine the time period. We don't always get the year, because you have to understand, if this is a time period way back in time, and these are simple people living in a rural environment, oftentimes they themselves don't even know the year. Sometimes they don't even know the name of the village or the name of the country, right? So we don't always get the year. Sometimes we do. And he described a scene where the soldiers were coming up and they were going to decimate the whole town. They were going to assassinate everyone there. And he described his death as the soldier swinging a sword and slicing the bottom part of his leg, and that's the way he died. He bled out, and that was exactly the spot that the medical industry couldn't figure out what was going on. So by virtue of that information coming to the light from completely unknown to the known, that alone is part of the healing, okay? That issue will dissolve simply by bringing it into the known. But because we like to do good housekeeping, later on when we speak to the higher mind, we always ask for the permission to do some further healing on that body part. And the descriptions are almost always the same. It's always something to do with an energy or a light or something like that. I always like to have them describe the healing because it's being recorded. So I know that when they listen to the recording, later on in time, that it's going to blow their mind when they hear their own voice speaking about their own healing. It makes it more profound and more meaningful for them as well. Yeah. So with all illness, perhaps, you go looking for it wherever it is. And I don't have to know. That's the beauty of it. I don't need to know. They're being guided. Their higher mind guides them. Where they need to go, they will go. Right? And Like I said, migraine headaches, by virtue of seeing that scene where they received that blunt force trauma in that past life. Now it's come to light. The issue dissolves. The higher mind is politely, respectfully asked to complete the healing. The job gets done, and away they go.
I love that you are so spiritual in this work, and it's beautiful because you're more than what your description is in your work. When I looked at everything and I was trying to find out about you, and now hearing you speak, I realize that this is full of grace and love when you're working with people and helping them. It's healing work, and it's lovely that you're speaking to this higher consciousness, these other what I don't know, whatever you refer it to be, something divine, and you're bringing it through. I'm amazed right now. I'm amazed in what you do. I do want to ask one question, because I know Michael has some, and he always says that to me, but I want to ask you and I know he knows what I'm going to ask you about extraterrestrials.
Yes. You want to talk about extraterrestrials? All right. Yeah,
Hello?
Sure. Yeah, I've been on some pretty interesting rides. I don't know if they call it the Galactic Federation or the Galactic Alliance. I get those two confused. But I did have a client that took me on a really special ride, and he was obviously a very advanced soul. He popped into a past, what he described, what we thought was a past life, and it was one of those sessions that was really confusing, because I would say, where's your home? I don't know. Where are you going? I don't know. There was a lot of I don't know, and this went on for a very long time. And then eventually it was discovered that he was from a planet within our solar system. Now, we need to ask the question, is NASA really telling us everything? Are they really telling us everything? Because what I'm discovering, I think not. There's a lot more going on out there than what they're telling us. His planet is within our solar system, and they are relatives of ours, and they're really, really interested in our ascension process. And the reason why they're so interested in our ascension process is because on their planet, the surface is inhabitable. They have to live beneath the ground. Okay, and they're a very advanced alien species, very enlightened alien species. And the reason for his visits here on Earth is he's in a scout capacity. He's here scouting things, gauging the energy, gauging what's going on this planet. So when he took me back to his planet, it was really interesting, because I got to explore some of the landscape, and I got to ask about the architecture and their homes, and there's no corners in their homes. I guess that's got to do with energy flow or something. I think that's what he said. From in their homes, they could see out, but people can't see in. So the walls have some sort of transparency. They all have work and jobs. This guy, his particular job was a little more advanced. That's why he was needing to go to the Galactic Federation and meet with them. And he described some of the other extraterrestrials. The one that stands out in my mind was the big ugly one that smelled horrible. Okay, that for some reason that stuck to my mind. Later, so this went on for some time, because
you could see reptilians, draconian reptilians that smelled and were big.
Yes.
Okay. That's
yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. Okay. Correct. I didn't know much about the reptilians at that time, but yes. And there's a beacon that is placed here on planet Earth. I think it's somewhere in northern Canada, if I'm not mistaken. It's been a long time since I've seen him, but I think it's somewhere in northern Canada, and it's their way to connect or something like that. And when he was on his planet looking at ours, he described the aura of planet Earth. So I had him describe that, and his words were, the aura around planet Earth is really strong. Okay, so in other words, basically what he was saying to me is this ascension process that we're going through right now, this upgrading of the collective consciousness is working. Okay, and we're going to come out on the other end sooner than later, in a more, I guess, utopian existence. Okay, because those of us that pay attention to all the craziness that goes on, it can be a little worrying sometimes, depending on some of the things that you're hearing. Especially with the Epstein files and all that nonsense. So that was a beautiful opportunity to have an audience with an extraterrestrial that is an Earth scout that's assigned to Earth to gauge our collective energy, and the report was positive.
Did the man or the person that you were doing the session with, were they realizing that they were coming from an extraterrestrial prior existence, or was this something discovered during the session?
No, this was something discovered during the session. I suspected something was up with this guy because he described his lifestyle as waking up at 4 a.m. and doing an hour of yoga and then another hour of meditation. And then he did some other spiritual practice all before he went to work. And I thought, well, this is not your average guy. Something's up with this guy. So I suspected something was going to happen. But to answer your question, Mary, no, he had no prior inkling of any extraterrestrial life. In his case, it was quite profound. So he wanted more information. So he came back again. He didn't have any physical issues or relationship issues either. He didn't care about any of that. He just wanted to continue the story and learn more. In fact, I'm forgetting now because so much time has passed. I think the visit with the Galactic Federation probably happened in his second session. I forget where the details came from, but there were 2 sessions with this man. So, yeah, really, really interesting. So we're going to make it. Good news, Mary.
Now, Mary, I don't know if we had some comments. I thought I saw a bunch of comments coming up, and unfortunately, I'm doing it on my phone today.
I know, but I just, what I did, I don't want to interrupt anyone too much. So from the beginning we had, and there's some kind of echo, I don't know where it's coming from, and I keep turning my mic off. So that's why I don't want there to be a problem with the sound. So Kevin said, hi, sounds looking great. And then Suzanne said, such an amazing topic. And then Kevin said, thumbs up. And then Suzanne said, I agree with Mary. This is fascinating, so interesting. So this is very, very special. This topic and this conversation is very special. I think it's needed. I'm excited that we have you here today.
Thank you.
I could ask you a million questions. I'm going to let Michael ask the next couple of questions.
All right.
So now, Albert, the basis and I would say the foundation of past life regression is going into the hypnotic state, correct?
Yes.
For anyone out there listening, or anyone that's gonna listen to this podcast later on, can you give any helpful tips for someone trying to access their own hypnotic state? To release anxiety, or just if they want to try to meditate, they want to just try to take themselves through a deep meditation where maybe some insight and guidance to a past life can come to them. What would be some guidelines or some of the process that you would recommend in someone trying to implement that hypnotic state in their own meditation?
Yeah. Well, you said it. You said it in your question. The meditative state, and and the rules never change. Practice makes perfect. When you're starting out, when I have a client that I suspect is on the left brain end of things, the analytical end of things, maybe a little bit skeptical, I always say to them, listen, you need to do your homework before you show up to the session. So I'll say to them something like, practice meditation for 5 minutes. And they'll say, what do you mean 5 minutes? That's it? 5 minutes? I'll say, yeah, 5 minutes. Because you could just imagine if I say to them, do it for 45 minutes, I pretty much lost them. They're not going to do it. So if they can master 5, then they can go to 7, and then they can go to 9, they can go to 11, right? And as they progress with their meditation practice, the brainwave frequency goes from higher alpha to lower alpha, and then the top end of theta in time, and then so on and so forth. Once you get to that frequency, that brainwave frequency, then higher mind, intuition, all these forces, they kick in, they take over, and just simply placing an intention prior to going into it, you get your answers. And here's something that your audience might like. Not everyone likes meditating. You know that. Some people are just not into it. They find it, I don't know, boring, I guess. And so I say to them, well, create the same atmosphere. You know how we call it your meditation altar, the place where your space where you do it. But rather than meditating, go into a deep contemplation. Really laser focus your intention and what it is you want clarity on, because deep contemplation is a very similar frequency to the meditative state. And that's one of my favorites. The contemplation is one of my favorites, right? Just turn off all the noise, all the electronics, and just zero in on an intention, or on something you're wanting to learn about, right? So this is another way to do it if you're not into meditation, right?
Now, one of the big things we've been hearing a lot of lately are binaural beats, hemi-sync.
Right.
What are your thoughts around that and incorporating those into the process?
Really good, Michael. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't expect that one. Really good. This is, how would I describe it? Binaural beats. Whole brain entrainment. Is that the word? Whole brain entrainment. Left hemisphere, right hemisphere firing in sync. Okay, that's it. One might argue that's the holy grail of the brain, is to have both hemispheres firing together, rather than more on the left or more on the right. In my protocol, I incorporate something called BLS, bilateral stimulation. Left, right, left, right, left, right. Okay? This is same idea as the binaural beats, to bring into entrainment whole brain thinking. Okay? The session, the experiences are more profound, they're clearer, and there's a lot more information when you're able to do that. But I can't do bilateral stimulation or BLS the way a psychiatrist would do it, with having them move their eyes, because they're in the hypnotic state. Their eyes are closed. So the way I do it is with a gentle left-right tap. Okay, so I use the back of their hands. Very gentle tap, and it brings into coherence both hemispheres of the brain. And that's the way that I like to bring them into what we'd call the hypnotic state, in preparation for the past life.
It's funny, as you're speaking about that, the imagery that comes into my mind is seeing the old school hypnotist with the stopwatch,
right.
waving it back and forth. So
that's probably what the intention was, I guess. Thinking back, I didn't think of that. Yeah. Good.
Interesting.
Nice.
Coming full circle.
Yeah, really good. That was a good question.
I know the wheels are turning in Mary's mind.
I have a question because frequency is. So I'm writing this book, and I had an experience a few days ago, and I learned a new technique for me, which I can talk to you off camera, because I'm fascinated with this whole thing today. This is fascinating to me that there's someone who, like you, that exists. And frequency, I realized, is a language.
Right.
And I was tapping into, I hear a frequency going on when I when I lay down to go to sleep, everything's quiet. And I can hear this frequency. So I tune into the frequency, and all these things have happened to me. Different spirits come to me, extraterrestrials come to me, like all kinds of beings come to me. And I'm wondering, with everything that you're learning about frequency, has it changed you? Are you becoming more telepathic and intuitive? And how is it affecting you? I mean, you're explaining all this unbelievable work with these clients. How is your work changed you?
Well, simply being in quite literally in the presence of that frequency. Okay, there is an actual measurable shift in the room, right? To the degree where in the client form, or the sheet that I have them look over before we start, it's even written in there that the energy can actually affect electronic equipment. So it's something that we're keenly aware of, that can happen. So, Mary, to your question, yes, you notice that in time your intuitive skills increase, your psychic abilities. Now, my role in this work, okay, we call people like us, and from my perspective, we call ourselves IP souls, okay, interplanetary souls, or simply put, advanced souls, mission-based souls. We're here for a purpose. Okay. To not do this work would be horrible for us. We would have very sad lives. It wouldn't work out for us. So we need to do this work. And I went off the question, Mary. I'm forgetting where we started here.
No worries. It was about how has, for me, what I was trying to relay is, the more that I'm going down the rabbit hole, and the more that I'm doing my work, it's advancing me and my skill set. And the more that you've accompanied your clients during sessions, I know that being around Michael has upped my game, because of his vibration, his frequency, his energy. How has it changed you as a person? Like, are you finding, how has it changed you?
Yeah. So, well, it's changed me profoundly. I'm a human lie detector test, that's for sure. I see right through people that are being false or being misleading, that's for sure. I see through all things that are misleading. It's became really this new found intuitive sense that I've had for some time now really came in handy the last several years, if you know what I'm talking about. So so yes, it has affected me profoundly. Think about it, just being in the presence of the higher mind. It's like what you were just describing, how Michael's energy has affected you. It can't not affect me, being in the presence of that. And it's not an energy that affects you temporarily. It's an energy that actually creates an upgrading. It stays with you. It's kind of like a plant medicine experience, like a psilocybin experience when you go out in nature and you, for the first time, fall in love with nature. You see it as a divine being. That's not an experience that goes away. That stays with you for the rest of your life. And it's kind of like this work as well. One client at a time, one little upgrade at a time. So in the next 5 years, I should be doing what Michael does, hopefully. We'll see, and what you do. Maybe.
I think you're there. I think you're there.
That's what you say. You're going there, because if you just said that, we just met, then that's in your destiny. That is your destiny. And I also get a book because of your experiences, and it's unusual. I mean, I don't know. I've met a few hypnotists myself, and or people that do the work you do, not as in depth. I'm talking about basic hypnosis, and you're unusual. I know you're unusual. I don't know. I sense a book.
And that's unusual in a very good way.
I know, in a good way. No, that's a positive word. Unusual to me is an anomaly. I love that. You're a conduit for the divine. You're a conduit for an unseen being that we don't know about, or many beings that they're utilizing your skills to help heal these people, to speak their truth, to gain access to knowledge that we don't normally hear. Like you mentioned earlier, the famous, what's her name? You mentioned
Dolores Cannon?
Dolores Cannon. I mean, her work was unbelievable. So it's very special.
Yeah, she had a huge impact on the spiritual world, and go figure, she doesn't consider herself a spiritualist, but rather an investigative reporter. Who would have thought? And so it's really good. Yeah, and I remember now where I was going with the IP soul thing, right? And how, although I am an IP soul or a mission-based soul incarnated here on this planet for a particular reason, my lane now, or let me back up for a moment. IP souls come in many different flavors. Okay, it's not just the free spirit spiritualist that puts flowers in their hair and wears beads and sings songs all day and dances all day. There's that end of it, but in the IP soul world, there's also the opposite range. There are also the analyticals, the more science-based minds. Okay, I fit somewhere probably in the middle, probably leaning towards the science-based side of things, because I always really enjoyed the teachers that concern themselves with bridging spirituality with science. It was almost like that really satisfied my mind and my intellect. People like Greg Braden or people like that. I really enjoyed their work. I found just the spiritual end, purely the spiritualist end, I found that interesting, but I needed that balance. Okay, so the IP soul actually has a range. Okay. So that's why when I say, well, this is my lane, where your lane is the evidential mediumship. Your lane is the psychic channeling and all that stuff. So we're all within that same framework, just on a different place. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So now Albert, a name that Mary and I were talking about earlier was Dr. Brian Weiss, and kind of his journey. I'm sure you're familiar with him.
Sure.
Now, he was an atheist. He didn't believe in the afterlife or a spiritual realm. And when he was taking his clients under, when he was putting them under hypnosis, they would go into these past life regressions. Right. And he was seeing profound change and shift. And that's something that he speaks about, completely changed his perception of reality and this world, and completely shifted his beliefs. Do you see that with a lot of your clients, that maybe they're
Yes.
atheist, or maybe they're unsure, uncertain? You take them
Yes.
through a past life regression, and now you've completely shifted and changed their perception of reality.
Yeah.
How often does that occur when you're taking people through? How often do you see that?
Not that often, but it does.
Most people come to you having a knowing that there's something else.
Yeah. Most people that come are up to speed, let's just say. Okay.
Yeah.
But every now and again, someone will show up that is a little skeptical, not really getting it. But there's this thing about the issue being chronic enough or bad enough that lets them let go of resistance and finally, for the first time, do something that is different from allopathic medicine or the pharmaceutical industry or something like that. There was this is where I have an easier time with clients like this, because I enjoy the quantum physics aspect and I enjoy the spiritual aspect, and I like mixing those together. Recently, I did have a client, and she was super left brain. She flat out said to me, "I'm skeptical." Right? So it took me a long time to describe this process, describe universal forces and how it all works and how we invite disease into our body. And I describe metaphysical causation and what the meaning of that is, and how the emotional component can be traced to the physical dis-ease. And I saw her go from a defensive body position to a relaxed body position. And it took about an hour and a half to get there. And that's where I said, we can begin now. And her session was beautiful. So much got accomplished in her lesson that she left kind of like shaking her head, like what just happened? You know, and that's what you want. That's the reaction you want.
Yeah, that's something similar that I'll experience as a medium. You know, the more resistant or closed someone is, the harder it is for me to pull that energy. You know, it takes much more of my energy to break through that. So the more open and receptive someone is, the easier it is for us to tap into that energy.
That's right.
Now I'm going to throw a question out there that's a little bit in right field.
Okay.
So as a medium and, tapping into psychic energy, future possibilities, we all have free will. We can all change that dynamic of, what is that possibility in the future? Have you ever taken someone through a past life regression where they've seen a potential future life or a future existent opportunity or something that pulled them into the future versus the past?
Yeah, absolutely. For sure.
Can you expand on that?
Yeah, for sure. Sometimes when things seem confusing, sometimes I have to ask myself, what's going on here? This doesn't seem like the past. It's certainly not the present. So in order to orient myself into the scene where they are, sometimes I'll just have them pause and describe some of the surroundings. What do the vehicles look like? What do the buildings look like? What are the materials of the building? Is it brick? What does it look like? And so sometimes, yes. And, we'd have to go down the rabbit hole, really, this whole time and space thing on how really there is no such thing as past and future. It's all happening at the same time. That's a rabbit hole that's a little tricky for some folks. But yes, some do resemble future lives. Now, the beautiful thing about this work is that every change is a complete change. So if you correct something in a past life or a future life or whatever it is, that change reverberates in the quantum field and it balances all of that stuff, future, past, and everything else. Okay. And then within the experience itself, you could actually do stuff like future pacing, where you can say, well, if the problem was to be solved, how would that life look? So in a sense, you're kind of like planting a new seed. flourish and to go on a more empowering path rather than the one that they're seeing right now or that they're experiencing in that past life. So the answer is yes. It's a bit of a go down the rabbit hole kind of question when you get into the fact. So with that, there really is no such thing as reincarnation. There is only such a thing as incarnation, because it's all happening at the same time anyway. So reincarnation isn't exactly an accurate word, but for the sake of clarity and so for people to understand, we go with those terms. That's how they experience it in this 3D, this third dimensional realm. So it makes sense for us.
We're gonna have to start talking about quantum physics and string theory now, right?
Yeah, maybe not string theory.
I have a question. How disorientated are clients after you've done a session? You remove the illness,
right?
They're now a new version of themselves,
right?
That's going to change so much their identity, how they have a perspective, how they physically feel. How long does it take for them to adjust?
Right. Well, if the energy shift is profound, then yes. When I know that a lot got shifted, I always contact them the next day just to see what's going on. I did it the other day, and she reported something like, I feel like I just got energetic surgery or something like that. Okay. So if I feel there's a profound shift that occurs, I will give them some information at the end. I'll say, don't be surprised if tomorrow you're going to want to stay in bed all day. Okay. Call your work, call your friends, tell them to not bother with you for 24 hours or for however long it takes, and just rest. So yes, there is an adjustment period for those that experience a more profound shift, especially if we're going after some sort of physical illness or a disease or something like that. Now, I don't want your audience to think that we only work with disease. It comes up, yes. Relationship issues, repeating patterns, right? That's a very common one as well. In a past life, you'll always find that. So it's like, is that enough just for them to see the repeating patterns in past lives? Well, it is enough, because it does come to the light, into the forefront where it goes from unknown to known. But we take it a step further, because now that we're connected to the higher mind, we ask for that timeline to be severed. No more energetic carryover into the current. So we actually sever timelines as well. Leave the past in the past. Okay. Vows that were made in past lives, that's a huge mistake. That's an energetic lock that carries from lifetime to lifetime. It manifests itself in a very negative way. And another beautiful thing about past life regression is that at some point, it's closer to the end of the session, I always finish with, higher mind, please do a complete body scan. See if there's anything in the physical body that we might have missed. See if there's anything in the emotional body that we might have missed. See if there's any attachments that are messing with the system. Any vows, any all of that stuff. Okay, that part is where I usually just sit back for a while. May take 5 minutes, may take 10 minutes. I had a client recently. She came back and she said, there's a dark entity inside of me. And I thought, wow, fantastic. We're getting our hands dirty a little bit today. That's great. That's fun for me. And so we were able to speak to the entity. Now, take the word dark out. It's just an entity is all it is. What people call ghosts, stuck in the lower astral plane. We learned that it was a male. We learned his name. And I asked the entity, when did you enter into her body? And the answer was, now keep in mind, the client has no memory of this. It was, the entity described when she was a little girl, she was handling something that potentially could have been harmful. I think it was a knife or something sharp. Okay. When her mother noticed that she was handling this potentially dangerous item, she screamed, "Put that down or you're going to die." Those were her exact words. So you could just imagine in the mind of a little child being told that you're going to die. In that moment, her energy field or her auric field weakened, and that's where the entity latched on. And it's been with her since childhood. So this was a beautiful session because it was a double healing, because that energy, that dark entity, had a tentacle into her relationship issues. It had a tentacle into some of her physical issues, and it had a tentacle into her emotional issues. So she was able to send it off into the light. So we healed the entity, and she also was able to let go of that heaviness that was holding her back in life. And this is a case where who knew that was coming? I had no idea. It's completely unexpected. But because we're thorough and we cover all our angles, that's usually how I complete the session, just to make sure. So Mary, you asked the question earlier, how many sessions, right? That's why our number is so small. 1 session, 2, maybe for something really chronic and long-standing, maybe 3 sessions, but nowhere near what conventional hypnosis does, nowhere near what talk therapy does, where they see their clients for months, maybe years. That's not the case with us. It's kind of sad because they go away. You did some amazing work. You kind of want them to come back, but as long as you're doing good work, that's the most important thing. Yeah.
And now, how long does the average session last?
If you were to include the discussion when they first arrive and the post conversation, because you want to have a conversation afterwards, because right at the end they're experiencing what we call hypnosis hangover. Okay, so I suggest to them that they bring a snack, because putting something in your stomach helps them to ground. Okay, because I don't want them to get in their car right after a session feeling lightheaded. So there's always a snack and a post session conversation. All wrapped up, start to finish, you're looking at 5, possibly 6 hours. Okay. If a lot of information is coming through them, then I don't stop the session. Let it go. Okay. Everyone's built differently.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're looking between 5 and 6 hours. Yeah. It's a long one.
Yeah. Very thorough. Very thorough.
What did you mean by vow? What did you mean by contract vow? What was that?
That's a good question. We make vows, wedding vows. Vows has the energy of vow is not a very positive energy. Okay. It's an energy of, let me see if I can find the right way to describe it. When you vow to someone, we will never be apart. We will be together for every lifetime, and you both look each other in the eyes and you make that vow, you're kind of messing with the natural process of nature. Okay. The thing is, the soul needs to experience various contrast and lessons, and it needs to grow. That vow bounds the two souls together, where it actually becomes a negative thing rather than a positive thing, although the initial intention was positive. Same thing with the wedding vows. That I think that needs to be rewritten from, do you vow this and do you vow that? I think wedding vows should just be your personal words and to each other, and that's it. So there's vows. Then there's the past life vows of celibacy. Perhaps they were in in some sort of religious institution in a past life. So a vow of celibacy usually plays out in the current life as sexual dysfunction. Yeah. So this is an example of how vows can muddy up the waters a little bit in the incarnation process from lifetime to lifetime. Does that make sense, Mary? Okay.
Yes, it does. I mean, it's something for me to think about. I'm processing all this. I have to watch this over a few times and speak to you off camera.
Yeah.
No, Albert, this is fascinating. I feel like this conversation could go for hours.
Yeah, sure.
But we're not going to do that to you. We're not going to keep you on all night. But no, really appreciate you giving this insight around this. It is fascinating. Definitely a fascinating topic. And I think if people can understand it at this level, it'll help them make sense of what's going on in this life and maybe why things are playing out the way they are. So I think it's something that everyone could benefit from. Now, any of our listeners that find this fascinating and want to check out what you're doing, or potentially, can you do a session by like Zoom or online, or does it have to be in person? Like someone here from the US, if they wanted to reach out to you in regard to a session or get some insight into a past life, is that something they would be able to do with you?
Yeah. Well, for gaining insight and asking me questions, that's easy. They can just go to my website, which is my name, albertcrimi.com, and there's a form there, and they can ask all the questions. I'm a bit of a traditionalist. I'm still of the mind that I like to be with the clients and exchange energies. Now, I know that there are many practitioners that do online sessions. I get that. I haven't gone there. I'm still a little old school. I was listening to Dean Martin yesterday, so you figure it out. I'm old school. And so yeah, good question. Yeah, I'm still in person. Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, good to know. But so any of our listeners though that want to find out more about past life regression, get some insight and guidance around that, what are the best ways for them to follow you and get more information around this?
Well, like I said, the website is a good resource, and there's a form there so they can ask any question they want to ask. On my Facebook page, I have this series that I call Hypnosis Stories of Healing. So I take a client session and I just narrow it down into 1 or 2 paragraphs, what they came for and what the outcome was. And I post them on Facebook as well as Instagram. So for the curious mind, rather than asking, emailing, they can just go there and say, wow, that's an interesting story. And some of them speak to them because they're experiencing something similar, if a relationship issue or a physical issue or whatever the case may be. Right. So they can gain some insight just by those little stories that I put together on Facebook. So Facebook is my name as well, except there is an S between my first name and my last name. Okay. So that's the best way to find me there if you want to read up on some session stories.
And is the correct pronunciation of the last name Crimi or Crimi? What is the exact pronunciation of that?
It's Crimi, like the texture.
Okay,
yeah.
Crimi text, easy enough. That makes it easy. So Albert S. Crimi.
Albert S. Crimi.
So anyone out there listening that wants to get more insight and guidance around hypnosis, past life regression, or anything that Albert's doing, you can absolutely follow him on his social media, his website, and we will put all your links on our social media, on the videos. So anyone that's looking, we'll have links to that stuff. But this has been a fascinating conversation. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your insight with us and our listeners. I know Mary's going to be calling you nonstop. Your phone's going to be right.
I want to get a session with you. I'm coming to Canada.
I can see the wheels turning. And
I'm coming to Canada because I have to get a session with you. I have so many things that we have to go through here.
Yeah, maybe in the summer when the beach is available.
I think so. I mean it. I really mean it because I haven't encountered anybody like you to do this that I would trust. And
Yeah.
I'm so grateful that you joined us today on Two Psychics, episode 81.
My pleasure. Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank
Anytime.
you so much for joining us,
Thank you.
and wishing you well. And I'm looking forward to the warm weather, and I'm sure you are too.
I am as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Albert. So
Very
anyone
Michael,
out there
thank you.
listening, we just want to thank our guest, Albert S. Crimi, and all his insight on hypnosis and past life. Any past life information you want, we will have his information on our social media pages, and we will have it attached to this video, so you can definitely check out what Albert's doing and any information on past life regression and
quantum journeying.
The quantum journey and all that encompasses. So Albert, thanks again for being here with Two Psychics podcast. We really appreciate your insight, and you're going to be back on because we have a whole bunch of other questions for you.
I want to just say one comment. Suzanne said, Albert, you are an amazing guest. I've learned so much, and you have given me so much to think about in my life. Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne. Very good. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Have a great night. Thank you, Albert.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.